Alice Cooper's birthday to you. Hello creeps, Andy here. Today I thought I would do a video about light horror stories to read for new readers. So whether that is you don't usually read books and you're looking for something to read, or you are a reader but you kind of want to dabble in horror but you don't want anything too bloody, disgusting, or dense, then this video will be for you. That being said, I know there are a lot of you out there that do read horror, but I would still like your opinions. So if you don't mind leaving a comment down below after you've seen the ones that I've suggested for other people that are kind of light horror books that I may not have, my cat's crying out there if you can hear, that I may not have mentioned, would be fantastic. So let's just jump on into it. I'm gonna save the most important one I think for last, so be sure to stay tuned for that. But otherwise, let's just jump on in. So again, these are just horror books that aren't too bloody, too gory, but they do either are horror books or do have a lot of elements of horror in them. Some of them are like mystery-ish type books. And that leads us into the first one. Great segue. Okay, so the first one that I want to recommend is Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. If you've watched all of my videos before, first of all, how you doing? And second of all, then you've seen probably me talk about all of these books. But And Then There Were None is a book by Agatha Christie. It's about a group of strangers who get invited to this island to stay the night in this big manor, and they start dying off one by one, so you're left kind of trying to figure out who killed them. Agatha Christie is the queen of whodunit novels, so it's a thriller, it's fun, it's, you know, exciting, it keeps you entertained. There is description of, obviously, people being murdered in here, but it's not focused so much on the murders as who committed the crimes. So it's definitely a good first-time thriller, horror, mystery type book to read if you're interested in something like that, but you don't want anything too intense. Agatha Christie is a great one. The next one that I want to recommend is I Am Legend. This is by Richard Matheson. So I have done a few videos on I Am Legend, the book, as well as the movie. I will link those down below if you're interested. But the book I Am Legend is very, very mild. It's about a man named Robert Neville who is trying to fight off these vampires. He is essentially the last man alive, but it's different than a normal vampire novel, I would say, because it really does focus on the biology of vampires and how or why they are how they are. There's also different types of vampires. There are living vampires and dead vampires, and you kind of go through his day just trying to survive. And if that sounds familiar, it is like the movie I Am Legend in that sense, but not a lot is similar. If you have seen I Am Legend but you haven't read this, it definitely won't ruin anything for you. This one is very much so different than that one, and very much so more like The Last Man on Earth, which is the Vincent Price movie, the first remake from this book. And then there's Omega Man that's in the middle of those two. But anyways, this one I would highly suggest. There's definitely aspects of horror in it and descriptions of vampire deaths and things like that, but it's not super bloody, super disgusting, and it is a very mild read. Most of the days you're just kind of going with Robert Neville, but there is a lot of, I think, commentary on the way that society is built and how society can change and how we kind of just go along with what we're told is okay. There's a lot to analyze there, but it is just a very surface level, easy read, if that makes sense. So highly suggest that bad boy. The next one I want to recommend, oh, I love this one. Shirley Jackson's We Have Always Lived in This Castle. So this is a phenomenal book. I love this book so much. It's very dark and weird and creepy, and when you're reading it, it kind of feels like you're sucked into another dimension, if I'm honest. It's about these two sisters who live in this big castle mansion because their family is very well off. However, most of their family had been potentially murdered, and so that's kind of sprinkled throughout the story. You get to hear bits and pieces of what happened to the family here and there, but it's not a huge reveal. It's little pieces, but the story really does focus around the young girl. She's very odd and very superstitious. The family really keeps to themselves. The town hates them because of what potentially happened. It's a very interesting read. I love the way that Shirley Jackson writes. It's very entertaining. There are parts that are very creepy, but most of the story is pretty mild, and you just kind of get the sense of who these girls are and how they're trying to, you know, make sense of the world around them, but with each other. Very odd and interesting, and I just adore this book so much. It's a great one that has, you know, elements of horror in it. There's mystery of how the family got murdered and why everybody hates them and things like that. But again, just a very easy very mild read, not a bunch of blood and guts or anything like that, if that's not what you're into. The next book I would of course recommend is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. So this is another fantastic one to read. I've also made a video on this, comparing the book Frankenstein to the movie Frankenstein. So I will leave that link down below if you're interested at all in that. They are two very different, very different representations of Frankenstein's monster. And this one, monster is very eloquently spoken. He's very poetic, whereas we all know the Frankenstein's monster in the movie. Very different of how Frankenstein started versus kind of how we all picture Frankenstein's monster in our head. I think this one is just a great foundational horror book. So if you're just trying to start getting into horror, you gotta eventually read where horror started. And I think this is a great, not that this is the first horror book ever written, but this is just such a classic. And I think that it's fantastic, very beautifully written. We follow Frankenstein, who makes the monster and kind of just has to live with the consequences of what he's done while making things right in the world. So, and again, a lot of stuff to analyze here. I'd really like to read this book again and make a whole nother video kind of deep analyzing this, because there's just so much here. But again, a very surface level, easy read if that's what you're into. There are obviously horrible things that happen in this book, but again, it's not so much focused on the blood and guts, but more the story of Frankenstein's monster. And that leads us to the last book I would like to recommend today. So this book is a very important book to me. Of course, I had to incorporate some Stephen King in this video. So the next one is a Stephen King book. However, a lot of my favorite Stephen King novels are very bloody and dark and disturbing, but this one is not quite like that. So this is Stephen King's The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. Now, I made a video about horror books that changed my life, and this one is definitely in there. I will also leave that video linked down below if you guys are interested in finding out like how this book has changed me so much as a reader and a writer. But this is a story about a young girl who goes missing into the woods, and she's dehydrated and sick from, eating berries and drinking water, and she's delusional, and she starts seeing things and hearing things. And so you're kind of stuck in this middle ground, like, is she just dehydrated or is something really there? And so it's a very interesting read, but I will say that I read this in like 6th grade, 6th going into 7th grade. So I don't think it would be too disturbing for anybody, but it really did just open up a world of possibilities in relation to horror. This was one of the first horror books that I ever read, adult horror books, and it really did just kind of change and shape who I am as a writer and a reader. So highly suggest this one. A fantastic book, definitely not super bloody and gory and disgusting like some of the other Stephen King books, but eerie and creepy, and absolutely a great place to start in horror. I think any of these books would be a good place to start. Some of them lean more towards thriller, mystery, but this one is just such a fundamental horror book that I think everybody who wants to start getting into horror should read. It really did just change a lot of how I see horror. So anyways, those are the 5 books that I recommend to kind of first-time horror readers or people who want to get into horror but don't exactly know where to start, but aren't big on the blood and guts. I really sincerely hope this video has helped anybody, even if it's just one person, in that way. I know that it's kind of daunting to look at 300 Stephen King books and be like, where do I begin? But I hope that I provided some books for you that get you started on your love for horror, because man, it is such a beautiful genre. Feel free to subscribe and stick around. As always, my second channel, my non-horror channel, my Instagram, and my creepy stories that I wrote, my original fiction, will all be linked down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you, what's today? This will be posted on Sunday. So I will see you Tuesday with another horror video, Tuesday and Thursday with another horror video. I'll see you next time, guys. Bye.